So we are here on top of a limestone ridge, and it's not a place for settlements. We didn't expect it, and also our excavation results.
Before his death, the legendary archaeologist Klaus Schmidt, the man who unearthed Göbeklitepe, guarded one final explosive secret.
Göbeklitepe itself was the end of a process, not the beginning of a process. It was something that marked together the best of everything that they'd accumulated and created it in one place.
It lay not in a distant desert, but hidden in plain sight beneath the streets and farms of Şanlıurfa, a site called Gürcütepe, obscure, overlooked, seemingly ordinary.
The floor is made of the bedrock, but carefully smoothed bedrock. So it's an unbelievable good preservation of this enclosure.
Yet Schmidt came to believe this forgotten mound was his most revolutionary find. A discovery so profound it would shatter our entire understanding of the Neolithic revolution. This is that story. The archaeologist's secret. The late archaeologist Klaus Schmidt was consumed by this place. It was a site he had worked at from 1995 to 1999, yet rarely spoke of publicly, a secret he held close. In his personal notes, he called it simply the other site. This place is Gürcütepe. To most visitors passing through the bustling streets of Şanlıurfa in Turkey, it is invisible. It doesn't have Göbeklitepe's dramatic sky-piercing pillars. No jaw-dropping monuments are waiting to be photographed. To the untrained eye, it looks like nothing more than a few low rises and empty plots of land, scattered along the Şuren stream. Today, modern buildings, roads, and courtyards cover most of it. The ancient world here is literally buried beneath the modern one. But Klaus Schmidt saw what others could not. Where we see a simple field, he saw a ghost. Where a paved road exists, he imagined the footsteps of people who lived thousands of years before. For him, Gürcütepe was not a footnote to his work at Göbeklitepe. It was the missing piece of the puzzle.
Of Göbeklitepe, A, B, C, D, numbered in order of the discovery, and D is a best preserved ones with a diameter of about 20 meters from east to west.
The site is vast, stretching across an ancient landscape in a series of 8 distinct mounds, which archaeologists call Gürcütepe 1 through 8. It first appeared on their radar in 1995 as a massive mega-village from the late Stone Age. But its very nature made it easy to ignore. Unlike the commanding hilltop of Göbeklitepe, Gürcütepe is humble, its secrets hidden in plain sight. This modesty is why it remained in the shadows for so long. Grand, dramatic ruins naturally capture our imagination, while the subtle contours of a place like Gürcütepe are easily overlooked. The largest open area available for archaeologists to dig is at Gürcütepe 3. Even here, the work is a race against time and urban expansion. Every shovel of earth is a precious opportunity, surrounded by the constant threat of new construction that could erase history forever. So why was Schmidt so obsessed with this unassuming place? Because he knew that true secrets are often buried deep, not displayed on the surface. Surveys showed that beneath those modern streets and quiet fields lies a deep, 6-meter-thick layer cake of human history. This isn't just one era, it's a timeline. It contains evidence from the late pre-pottery Neolithic, the same incredible era as Göbeklitepe, then continues through the first invention of pottery, and even shows signs of life from the Hellenistic and Roman periods. This makes Gürcütepe uniquely special. It wasn't a place that was used and abandoned. It was a home, a workshop, a community that thrived for millennia. Schmidt believed its layout, with areas for domestic life, craft making, and communal gatherings, would tell a completely different story than its famous neighbor. Göbeklitepe speaks of ritual and ceremony, but Gürcütepe, he suspected, held the shocking truth about how people actually lived. It was the story of the everyday people who might have built those monumental temples. This was the final clue he was chasing, the truth hidden under the soil. waiting until the very end. Secrets beneath. The Gürcütepe mounds rise from the Harran Plain not merely as topographic features, but as layered archives of some of humanity's earliest settled communities. These excavations have revealed multiple Neolithic settlements, with most belonging to the significant Aceramic Neolithic period, a time when daily life and craft proceeded without the use of pottery. This makes the site of Gürcütepe II particularly pivotal, as it was the first Neolithic settlement discovered in this region. Its deposits are profoundly deep. The Aceramic layers alone extend at least 4 meters, and after years of work, archaeologists have still not reached the virgin soil beneath, suggesting a long and intense history of occupation. So far, 2 primary settlement layers have been identified, each preserving distinct traces of life, work, and belief. The story of the upper layer is written clearly in mud and stone along an eroded gully. Here, 3 large rectangular structures were unearthed, numbered by excavators as houses 1, 2, and 3. These buildings reveal very different shapes and potential roles. House 1 is the most easily pictured and impressive structure. It was built with stone foundations and rammed earth walls called pisé, of a massive scale, over 1.4 meters thick. Inside, upright stone steles were found, likely serving as roof supports, but also potentially carrying a symbolic meaning, marking this as more than a simple home. Its design and scale suggest a special communal or even religious purpose, an interpretation strengthened by its stylistic links to the large-roomed buildings phase of the important site of Çayönü. House 3 echoes the general plan of House 1, but yields its own unique assemblage of finds. In contrast, House 2 is not a complete structure, but a small surviving corner of a rammed earth wall, the rest likely lost to erosion. The stone tools recovered from these upper houses further connect Gürcütepe II to a wider Neolithic world. Alongside abundant flint and obsidian were distinctive byblos points, large arrowheads whose bases, however, showed small burin removals. These local variants indicate that toolmakers were not just copying styles, but actively experimenting with form and function. Beneath this upper layer lies a tighter, older set of rooms labeled Houses 4 through 7. This lower level presents an even earlier settlement phase, marked by small, narrow compartments. The walls of these rooms often stop mid-line, and the floors are patchy, which could indicate they were storage cells, cramped workshops, or the fragmentary remains of a neighborhood that had partially collapsed or been washed away. Their small size and fragmentary state evoke a sense of close-packed living or repeated rebuilding on a tight footprint. Evidence of burnt pisé in this older level points to a destruction event, followed by rebuilding. This was happening while Stonehenge was just a ditch in the ground. The material culture adds rich color to this architectural history. The absence of pottery at Gürcütepe II firmly places it within the Aceramic Neolithic, making the few ceramic pieces found at the neighboring Gürcütepe I especially valuable, as they hint at a later transition into the ceramic Neolithic. At Gürcütepe II, stone dominates the record. Beyond chipped tools, ground stone artifacts appeared, including bowls and carefully hand-shaped limestone figurines. One such portable image, a tiny figurine with a flat, disc-like face found in the upper houses, links the site to a regional style practiced down the Balık Valley, suggesting shared symbolic or ritual practices. Together, these finds paint a picture of a dynamic community. It was a place where people lived, worked, and remembered across generations, reusing the same ground until it grew into a thick, complex stratigraphy of trampled floor surfaces, hard-packed layers recording countless daily acts. The combination of modest domestic structures, possible special-purpose buildings, and symbolic artifacts reveals a community that was more than a cluster of homes. It was a node in a wider cultural network, where stone was shaped into both tools and meaning. where fire could reshape walls and where human life left behind deep layers of history, much of which still awaits discovery. Future work promises to further illuminate how Gürcütepe was connected to other seminal sites like Göbeklitepe, offering an ever-richer window into the Neolithic world. Everyday temples. The first season at Gürcütepe revealed a scene profoundly different from Göbeklitepe's monumental pillars and dramatic animal carvings. Here, no giant stones soar above the fields. Instead, the ground preserves the quiet rhythms of domestic life. Houses, hearths, tools, and the small, handled objects of daily existence. Recent research suggests this transition to settled village life occurred rapidly during favorable, wetter climatic conditions in the early Holocene, a transformation vividly captured in Gürcütepe's deep stratification, with more than 20 feet of accumulated history. At the lowest levels lie late pre-pottery Neolithic remains. Above them, the earliest pottery layers, and higher still, later mixed deposits. The houses, built on stone foundations with rammed earth walls, followed a clear, practical plan. Inside, hearths and built-in features facilitated cooking, storage, and craft activities. These were homes, not temples. Yet within their yards and corners emerged a kind of ordinary ritual, spaces defined by hearths, firing pits, and middens where daily life unfolded openly. Crucially, recent discoveries indicate that these growing communities managed their water resources ingeniously. Potential water harvesting systems carved into bedrock at sites like Gürcütepe would have been essential to sustain settled populations. This ability to manipulate local hydrology underscores a sophisticated adaptation to the environment, supporting both daily life and early village cohesion. Workshops were developed where tools and waste accumulated. Flint knapping areas are littered with production flakes, while groundstone implements like mortars and pestles speak to intensive food processing. Small stone pallets hint at pigment grinding or craft use, and beads and bracelets reflect personal adornment and skill. The toolkit was both versatile and refined: axes for woodworking, grinding stones for grain, and finely chipped points for hunting. Symbolic expression at Gürcütepe was quieter than at Göbeklitepe, but no less meaningful. Limestone figurines depicted human forms in varied shapes, some full-bodied female figures with wide hips and rounded torsos, which become more frequent in later layers and may signal evolving ideas about fertility or social roles. Other figures were lean, gender-neutral, and portable, belonging not to grand plazas, but to households and individuals. For archaeologists like Klaus Schmidt, these contrasts were significant. Göbeklitepe appeared designed to awe and unify, a large-scale public project. Gürcütepe, by comparison, was rooted in daily sustenance and sustained making, its long occupation marked by episodes of fire, rebuilding, and participation in wide exchange networks evidenced by materials like obsidian. The site offers a crucial perspective on the Neolithic landscape, not as a sister to the temples, but as evidence of a rapid shift towards settled village life, enabled by environmental adaptation and technological ingenuity, where household and community resilience took center stage. Reopening Gürcütepe. In 2021, archaeologists returned to Schmidt's unfinished work and immediately found something that changed everything. For the new team, this wasn't just another dig. It was a rare opportunity to reopen Schmidt's unfinished questions and to peel back the layers of one of the last untouched corners of the site. With much of Gürcütepe already swallowed by modern construction, the archaeologists turned their attention to the best-preserved ground left, the western edge of Gürcütepe 3. There, they marked out a precise 30 by 30-foot grid, a framework that would let them uncover the remains in a methodical, controlled way, stone by stone, layer by layer. Working in neat 10 by 10 meter squares, they opened 6 trenches at the highest point and uncovered 2 clear layers of occupation, 2 chapters of everyday life frozen in earth. Just beneath the thin modern soil, Layer 1 revealed houses with stone foundations and large rooms. Around the houses, the team found open yards used again and again, hearths for cooking, middens where daily waste ended up, and firing pits, flat-bottomed holes lined with burned stones used for baking or industrial heat. Those same open spaces also doubled as workshops. Small tools and objects were everywhere. Limestone figurines and phallic shapes, beads and bracelets, stone weights, flaked discs and pallets, axes, mortars and pestles. The mix of things points to homes where food was prepared, goods were made, and symbols were kept. Busy households that mixed family life with craft and trade. Layer 2 showed up only in the southern trench, but it talked in the same voice. Rectangular houses with stone bases and pisse walls, that is, rammed earth construction, and hearths suggested multiple rooms. Outside, hearths, firing pits, and middens matched the pattern from Layer 1. People arranged living and workspaces around shared courtyard areas. Layer 2 yielded fewer objects. More limestone figurines, small animal figures in terracotta, stone vessels, and beads. But what it did show stressed continuity. The village plan stayed steady over time. Houses, shared yards, cooking, firing, and waste zones. A striking part of the finds is the stone toolkit. Chipped stone tools dominate. Big pointed pieces known in archaeology as biblos and palmyra types. These large arrowheads are classic markers of the pre-pottery Neolithic B period, a time when hunter-gatherer ways were shifting towards settled farming and new crafts. Alongside those points were everyday flint and obsidian tools, blades, scrapers, and cutting pieces used from morning chores to making other tools. Ground stone tools were also common. Basalt mortars and pestles show grain or plant processing. Stone vessels carved from alabaster and limestone hint at storage and serving. These worked stones took time to make. Grinding and polishing leave a different kind of mark than flaking, and they speak to settled life, where people invested in durable, heavy items for the long term. The choice of materials tells its own story. Flint and obsidian are excellent for sharp tools, while basalt and limestone are heavy and good for grinding or making containers. Alabaster vessels suggest care for precious materials. Where those raw materials came from is a wider question. Obsidian, in particular, often traveled long distances in the ancient Near East. Finding it at Gürcütepe means people there are linked into networks of exchange or movement, bringing rare stones home to shape them into tools and objects. Gürcütepe 3's western slope is a snapshot of people who built, cooked, worked, and thought in the same shared spaces. The 2 layers show how patterns held steady, even as some things changed. Stone points and polished bowls, firing pits and figurines. Together, they paint a clear picture. A community rooted in place, skilled with many materials, and linked to wider landscapes by trade and material choice. The mound keeps its silence, but its stones keep talking, if someone is ready to listen. Stones and meals. At Gürcütepe, everyday life left clear traces. Houses held tools people used every day. Heavy basalt mortars and pestles for grinding grain, the Neolithic equivalent of a food processor, as well as ground stones and stone bowls. Some vessels were carved from alabaster or limestone. These were not showpieces, but working gear, the kind that got worn thin, but kept a household going. Along with cooking gear came objects that held meaning. Limestone figurines, male, female, and forms that do not fit neat labels, sat on shelves or in corners. Most follow a blocky style common in nearby places. Yet 2 figurines stand apart. They are rounder and larger. with full hips and broad bodies. These overweight female figures likely had special value, perhaps linked to fertility, health, or local identity. Animal bones from Layer 1 tell us what people ate. Their diet would be familiar in many parts of the world today. A staple of sheep and goat, much like modern lamb and mutton, supplemented with pork, the ancient equivalent of today's widely consumed protein, and some beef. Wild game such as gazelle and deer provided occasional variety, similar to how venison or other game might supplement a modern diet. The tools match those food choices. Mortars and pestles hint at grain processing for porridges or breads, while stone bowls could hold stews or stored grain, early versions of today's staple foods. Flint flakes and fine points reveal ongoing tool-making. People chose basalt for heavy work, alabaster or limestone for finer vessels, and flint or obsidian for sharp edges. The choice of stone was about use and value, not only looks. Those two large female figures raise interesting questions. Were they family heirlooms passed through generations? Were they made for special events or kept for household rituals? Or did they mark a change in how people thought about bodies and life cycles? They may signal a local style or a wider cultural shift in the later Neolithic. Gürcütepe shows a society rooted in daily care and craft. There were no huge public monuments here, meaning lived in close objects. A worn mortar, a bead on a string, a carved figure kept by the fire. These small things carried memory and identity inside homes. By listening to these ordinary items, archaeologists can read a different side of the past. They find skill, care, and belief woven into daily chores. The site reminds us that history is made not only by grand buildings, but by hands that grind grain, shape stone, and keep small images close. In those simple acts, people shaped life and meaning, and left traces that still speak today. After the pillars. Gürcütepe is more than stones in the ground. It is a story of how people change when the world around them changes. After the great enclosures and carved pillars at Göbeklitepe were left behind, people did not vanish. They moved down from the hills and learned new ways to live on the plain. Gürcütepe gives a rare view of that shift from spectacle to survival. Today, work at the site goes well beyond digging and dating. Teams read soils to find microscopic seeds and charred plant bits. They study pollen and tiny plant remains to rebuild the ancient landscape. Animal bones are sorted to show herding choices, which animals were raised, which were hunted, and how diets shifted through time. Stone flakes and tool waste are mapped to find workshops and to track craft skill and trade. Each tiny find, a seed, a shard, a flake, adds a line to a larger story about food, work, and how people live together. The main idea that comes from these studies links climate and choice. Small shifts in rain patterns or river flow could have made upland life harder. Just as today's communities adapt to climate change, at that time, farming on fertile plains might have offered steady returns. Building huge monuments takes many hands, time, and social energy. If more families turned to farming, fewer people might join large communal projects. In this view, Gürcütepe is part of a regional move. From big, shared construction towards smaller, self-sufficient communities that focused on fields, herds, and household life. Symbolic life did not end. It moved into homes. Figurines, beads, and decorated tools were kept near hearths and shelves. These objects show continued care for belief and identity, but on a smaller, more personal scale. The overweight female figurines found at Gürcütepe stand out. They may mark ideas about fertility, abundance, or social roles in communities tied to farming and family life. Symbols shifted from open plazas into the intimate space of the household. This shift changes the story of the Neolithic. Instead of a sudden collapse after the Age of Monuments, a pattern of transformation appears. Communities adapted their economy and social structures. They kept craft skills and exchange networks, but reorganized work and ritual to fit village life. Gürcütepe records resilient people who reworked their lives rather than disappearing. There is urgency in this work. Modern construction, road building, and farming have already damaged large parts of the mound. What remains is fragile. If the site is not protected, important chapters of this transitional story will be lost forever. Preservation is not just for scholars. It helps local people connect to deep pasts and keeps a valuable lesson about human change available to everyone. Gürcütepe's value is both local and global. It fills a gap between grand monuments and everyday villages. It asks archaeologists and the public to listen to humble things: a burned hearth, a bead, a bowl. These small items reveal how people balanced ritual and routine, belief and bread. Protecting the site and supporting careful study will let Gürcütepe keep teaching how human societies bend, reshape, and carry meaning forward when old ways end and new ones begin. Pillars and hearths. The story of early Neolithic life in southeastern Turkey is not one of a single monument or idea, but a complex mix of public spectacle and private life. This is illustrated by the contrast between Göbeklitepe.
Our ancestors were capable of making this. This is Göbeklitepe.
With its huge T-shaped pillars and animal carvings, and nearby sites like Gürcütepe, which reveal a quieter, more intimate world of domesticity. Together, they show how ritual and routine developed side by side. Gürcütepe is a smaller transitional site. Its modest rectangular homes, built on stone foundations with rammed earth walls, were centers of daily life, containing hearths and tools for work. Thick deposits of refuse outside indicate a long, continuous occupation. One of its most striking features is the prominence of the female form in limestone figurines. While most are blocky and common to the region, two overweight female figures stand out, possibly reflecting changing ideas about fertility or social identity. These portable, personal objects suggest symbolism was rooted in the household as much as in public ritual. The site's domestic tools are rich and varied. Basalt mortars, pestles, and stone bowls show how food was processed, while flint and obsidian tools, the latter acquired through distant trade, reveal skilled craftsmanship and a focus on daily beauty through items like beads and bracelets. In contrast, Göbeklitepe was initially seen as a unique cult center, its large circular enclosures and carved pillars suggesting large gatherings and coordinated labor. Later work, however, revealed domestic aspects like plant processing, blurring the neat separation between temple and village. Both sites belong to the larger Taş-Tepeler landscape, a web of activity where each location had its own emphasis. This mix raises key questions. Did the same communities build both kinds of places? Or did different groups favor different styles? Alternatively, monumental centers may have come first, with later communities turning towards settled life and household symbolism. The long occupation at Gürcütepe suggests gradual change, not a sudden break. Klaus Schmidt's work at Göbeklitepe
It wasn't until German archaeologist Klaus Schmidt visited the site and began digging. They realized what was really at this site.
reshaped Neolithic understanding, and sites like Gürcütepe have since filled in the picture. The region ultimately offers a lesson in balance. The monumental pillars tell a story of shared gatherings and public belief, while the smaller houses and figurines speak of family life and personal meaning. Together, they provide a fuller view of early settled life, where public spectacle and private care were woven into a single human story. Future excavations at Göbeklitepe and Gürcütepe will push beyond exposed enclosures to map subsurface architecture, using targeted trenching, geophysics, and microstratigraphy to reveal construction techniques and building sequences. Scholars will pursue biomolecular traces, ancient DNA, and isotopic sourcing to pin down who these pre-agricultural builders were and whether populations moved regionally or represented local lineages. Refined radiocarbon and isotopic dating will clarify why Göbeklitepe's monumental rings were deliberately buried and whether burial signaled ritual closure, landscape management, or social reorganization. Detailed 3D recording and comparative iconographic work across Taş-Tepeler sites aims to decode the animal and abstract carvings as seasonal markers, clan symbols, or shared myths. Experimental archaeology and residue analysis could reconstruct carving techniques and how spaces were used.